So what we're going to do today is I'm going to present you some information, and then I'll leave plenty of time for questions, because that's what always happens. People just want to ask a lot of questions, and that's okay. That's why I'm here. So thank you so much for coming to the presentation. We are going to talk about optimal nutrition and Prader-Willi syndrome, and we have 3 objectives for today. We're going to emphasize that diets offering sources of protein, fat, and nutrient-dense carbohydrates are a good source of nutrition for all ages in PWS. Probably like, what is she talking about? But this is what I will explain. The second is we're going to share some preliminary data that a very nutrient-dense diet that has solid sources of healthy fat and fiber can support weight loss in children and adults with PWS, and also people without PWS. That can be very helpful. And the third, which says number 1, but it's really number 3, is discuss exercise as a crucial component of the nutrition recommendations. Please come. Please come. Welcome, everybody. We're just going over objectives. Yes. Fill in. I'm going to wait a minute. Thank you for coming to my discussion of nutrition. So I want to say this. I am confused, and I am a dietitian. It is confusing, okay? Every day you open up whatever news you read, and somebody's telling you something about nutrition that you thought it was okay to eat blueberries, and something has happened to the blueberries, okay? It is very frustrating being a dietitian dealing with this, okay? So I want you to know that I feel your pain. I want you to know that even as a dietitian for 20 years and a lactation consultant, and I've worked with mostly in pediatrics, but also with adults, it's very confusing, all right? So you have to have an open mind. You are forced to have an open mind to understand what's going on. So things that we said in the 1990s are not true anymore. We thought we were right, which is a big problem, and now we know we were wrong. So let's just land here that it's confusing. So we're going to try to make sense of this the best that we can so that you can feed your children. But we have to back up, and I don't want to insult anybody at all, because that's not my intention. My intention is to help you as much as possible. That's why I'm here. But I do have to back up and tell you a little bit about nutrition so you understand, because when you flip a label over, I want you to know what the heck you're reading, okay? Why is it that bread has 15 grams of carbohydrate in it? Why am I counting? Why is the Facebook page telling me to count carbs? I don't understand. So let's just go through it a little bit. So carbohydrates, if you take 4 calories per gram, 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories. If you take 1 gram of protein, that's 4 calories. Fat, if you take 1 gram of pure fat, it's 9 calories. And that's the word fattening. People say, oh, that food is fattening because it's more dense, has more calories. That's why people say that. So just, you can land there. What are carbohydrates? And again, you may already know this and think, oh, why am I sitting in this lecture? I already know this stuff. But we really need to understand and break down food so I can build you back up and explain what's going on. So carbohydrates are considered fruits and vegetables, pasta, bread. And then there's the good carbs, bad carbs kind of thing. So you hear this all the time in the media. Well, that is a bad carb, or you hear it from your best friend. You shouldn't eat that because it's a bad carb. And so there are good carbs, though. I don't subscribe. I'm not the kind of dietitian that subscribes to the fact that, you know, all carbs are bad. So good are fruits and vegetables, whole grains, those kinds of things. When you flip a label over, or you're looking on a food on the internet, look for the fiber first. I'm not saying that it's always like that is it. If it has good fiber in it, you should eat it and give it to your family. But what I'm saying is it's a good initial look at the nutritional profile of a food. So looking at fiber is important. Beans, peas, lentils, brown rice, and quinoa. The bad ones, you see them there. I don't need to say them out loud. You know what they are, okay? There they are. Then let's talk about protein. Protein is very important. Meat, chicken, fish, nuts, eggs, dairy, cheese, and then the fats. And these are foods that have a high percentage of fat, oils and avocados. Now we're getting to some interesting things. Please come in, sit down, welcome. The interesting part is that there's foods that carry carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So if you are new to nutrition and you don't know what you're doing quite yet, you start flipping labels and taking a look and seeing, oh, this is quite interesting. Eggs, they're high in protein and fat, but they don't have that much carbohydrate. You start to get a sense of where they land in a carbohydrate, protein, or fat. And so Yogurt and milk have a really nice profile of carbohydrate, protein, and fat. Nuts and seeds, protein and fat. Beans and lentils, cottage cheese. So if you're not familiar with nutrition, because I don't know where everybody lands, start looking at those labels and familiarizing yourself with what's going on. So this is what you came to talk about. Melanie, what are we supposed to do? We're so confused. What are we supposed to do? Well, I will tell you what I know for sure. This is not nutrition at all. I don't know what food this is, but this is some kind of food that's sold in our stores. It's disgusting. And if you do nothing, let's say you leave out of here and say, well, whatever, it was fine, the lecture was fine, just go home and throw the stuff out that looks like this. That's all I want you to do. If you have things in your cabinet that look like this, that you don't recognize, or your great-grandmother would not recognize what that word is, it's not food. So that's the thing I know for sure. What I also know is that there's a lot of discussion about low-carb diets in the PWS community and the world. Would you agree? Yes. There's something to them. But how low do we go? So the ketogenic diet, how many of you have heard of it? Yeah. Facebook pages, people. Before a diagnosis of PWS, had you heard of a ketogenic diet? No. Yes, okay. It is very high in fat, okay? There's calorie restriction, there's a measure of everything to the grams, and I'm a conservative gal, and it really requires monitoring. You can't just be like, we're going for the ketogenic diet today. Let's start right now. I don't think so. I think you need to go to the doctor, and you need to have blood drawn and urine, analyzed, and lots of things. Blood pressure, I don't know. You got to take a look at this. I am not an expert in this. I don't claim to be, though I have an open mind. If somebody shows me something and says this is the way to go, I'll learn. But at this point, I don't subscribe to this diet for what I see. There are risks that are right here, and the biggest thing is if you were in the interview, I look at all your families individually and have to look at what is the lifestyle. I can't just say, kale, apples, and almonds. That's what you need to eat. I need to look, can you afford kale and apples and almonds? And do you even like kale? I don't know. So you have to look at all these diets and say, can this family follow this? Is this going to be more harm for us socially and psychologically than it is going to be than not? And so this is a very, very strict diet. There are some families that do it very beautifully, and that's respectable. What I've seen is some concerning things with pediatric population there. There's also the modified Atkins diet or modified keto, which I think a lot of people kind of subscribe to. You don't need to weigh or measure food. There's no fluid or calorie restriction. Fats are encouraged. Carbs are still monitored closely, but there's a range of carbs. Usually people are taking in, and don't quote me on this, but like maybe 200-ish grams a day. Is that right, Cheryl? About 200, 300 grams a day maybe of carbs. This is very minimal carbs, the modified. And again, I've seen it different. I've seen it like more than 20 grams or maybe 50 grams a day or something like that. But it's still very low in carbohydrates. Heavy in meats, chicken, fish, turkey, eggs, and you're avoiding starchy vegetables, and sometimes that's good. There's actually a silver lining here because sometimes these carbohydrates fall into kind of the bad category. The challenge is, again, lack of variety, high in fat and adherence. Paleo diet is somewhat similar. It's very, the great thing about it is it's very much about no processed food, and I think sometimes people can get into the processed food with modified Atkins. There's lots of companies, and I've been to some of these food shows that really cater to that, but they're processed foods. So paleo is very much about fresh food, real food. Disadvantage, again, lack of variety, cost, and adherence. So the current thought is this: fat is important. That's the end of that. It's very, very important. Somewhere in every single time you eat for the day, you could potentially be analyzed like you had 55% carbohydrate, 25% fat, whatever, and a certain amount of protein. And so somewhere between no carbs at all and 45% carbohydrate is where you all need to be with your families. Now, really the reason why the ketogenic diet and some of these very low carbohydrates diets worry me is because you're also likely giving growth hormone injections. You're putting your child in ketosis, and I don't know what happens there. So all I've seen with families that have come to me over the years with low carbohydrate diets is they are falling off the growth chart, which to some doctors that don't understand, they may be like, oh, well, at least they're not obese. And so they may not be, but for me as a dietitian and for the brain development of your child, I don't want your child falling off the growth chart. I want them to have a steady growth along their own curve, whatever that may be. And so I just can't, I don't feel comfortable doing it. I've seen lots of kids come in who are falling asleep in physical therapy, not gaining good weight. And so Dr. Miller and I work very closely together on this and have had many, many discussions over the years that there has to be a middle ground. There has to be something we do where we can advance these kids and get them the energy that they need, but maybe control their weight a little bit better than a low-fat diet and the hunger, right? So what is optimal nutrition? Well, in the United States, they came out, they used to have a food guide pyramid. Do you remember that pyramid? Oh, was that awful. I hope nobody from the USDA is in here, but it was not good, okay? It really was very misleading. This is a little bit better because it's a picture, it's a snapshot. Oh, I'm gonna sit down for lunch at 12:15, this is what I should be eating, okay? And so it's a little bit better, but it's not for everybody, right? And then this got a couple years ago, I invented this little PWS plate. And kind of what it showed is it's veggie heavy with a little bit of fruit, some whole grains there, protein, and then you slather fat over all of it. You know, and fat, not like you pour oil on it, but like the protein has good fat in it. The whole grains, you know, you maybe, I don't know, you roast the vegetables in olive oil, pardon me, something like that. That's what I mean by layering the fat. The dairy, somebody asked me about dairy in the Q&A, and we'll talk about it. Okay. A healthy diet has variety. This is what I know. So when I go, I do work with adults, but I'm not going to lie, like I really am a pediatric dietitian. And so people will say to me, I'll go to a party and they'll say, oh my God, you're a dietitian? I have to tell you what I eat for breakfast. Every morning I have a blueberry spinach smoothie. Every morning I have that. Mm-hmm. And they say, what do you think about that? Because people want, and I'm not trying to insult anybody, but people want me to say, oh God, this is perfect. You need to keep doing that. You know, you could add some chia and some flax, whatever. I don't know. But what I really think is that's not good. So everybody that has seen me over the years knows that I am very big into rotation. And what I'm talking about is if you buy organic milk from Horizon one week, go to a different store and buy your organic milk from a different provider another week. And the reason I say this is this. I don't know what's in any of this stuff. You think Whole Foods is safe? I don't know. So what I try to tell all my clients and people that see me is don't just think about, I need to have organic milk for my kids. I want you to think about variety. So when we say as dietitians, the diet should have variety. It's not just me saying you should have eggs and avocado for one day and you should have your blueberry smoothie another day and you should have your oatmeal bar another day. It's actually like buy different kind of oats once in a while. Buy different kinds of olive oil brands once in a while because I don't know what's in any of this stuff. Does that make sense? Okay, very good. So it's variety within the food and the brand is what I try to tell people to keep you as healthy as possible and safe. So here is where I land, all right? The Mediterranean diet. If you just, type in CNN and Mediterranean diet, and there's 1,000 articles that are gonna pop up, or just Mediterranean diet into your search engine of your choice. You will see a lot about the Mediterranean diet. And what this is it pulls a little bit from all the diets that I've talked about, but it's about fresh food, it's about not processed foods, it's about a little bit of meat, protein, limiting heavy kind of meats and fats, not artificial foods or processed foods, so that you really have what I call nutrient-dense foods in your diet. And look at these headlines. These are just ones I pulled last week. Mediterranean diet may cut stroke risk for women. Mediterranean diet has benefits even in old age, study suggests. Switching to a Mediterranean diet can boost health. And Mediterranean diet keeps its place at the top. Now, there's also a study that came out that said the Mediterranean diet's not as powerful as you think. And that's always going to happen. I mean, I'm telling you, just go back to my third slide. Nutrition's confusing. It just seems like this is logical for right now, where we are, what we know. It's what we need to do for now. So Latham, how many of you have heard of Latham Centers? Oh, if you haven't, please go and visit their website at number 1. And they're a beautiful, beautiful residential and independent living program for children and adults with PWS up in Brewster, Massachusetts. And they have a ton of experience with Prader-Willi syndrome, okay? And they called me several years ago to help them change their menus. And I thought, now this is interesting, because I should go up there and I should take a look at what's going on here and see if we can kind of move them towards more of a Mediterranean diet. And in the back of my mind, though this study's getting a little bit older, it's still strong to me. It still makes sense to me from Dr. Miller about the study that she did with a little bit lower carbohydrates, a nutrient-dense diet with 20 grams of fiber and a good amount of fat, absolutely still calorie controlled, absolutely still everything that we need to do, but the ratio of the carbohydrate, protein, and fat changed. So I went up to Brewster with her study in mind. Here were their menus before, and they were very open about this, that they were following a low-fat regimen for their residents, and they were ready to change. They had seen over and over again, you know what, something is not right. We don't feel right. We feel like we can do a better job. We're reading. They were had their finger on the pulse of what was going on in the news and the research, and said, this doesn't feel right. We need to do something to change these menus for these people. And so in efforts to have a high fiber diet, there was salad at every lunch and dinner. There was little fiber variety, meaning salad, it has some fiber in it, but what about some other things we can do to get some fiber in there? And then afterwards, what happened is we still calorie controlled it. We sat with, we kind of sat together and said, we got to put more higher in fat foods. Instead of salads all the time, let's roast vegetables. Let's bake vegetables. Let's, do different things with them so the fiber changes. It's not just this raw fiber, which we worry about in general with gastroparesis, right? Putting all that high fiber in there. But, it's not like they had any more problems than anybody else did with any kind of gastroparesis, but they just knew this was a change. And so what happened was it was kind of a beautiful situation, because the entire staff was there with the clinical department, and then the chef who was in charge of everything, Paul Donahue, was there, and we sat there for a couple days and really just marinated, for lack of a better word, in their current menus and what we would change them to. And look at what happened. So I said to them, listen, Latham, you're sitting on a pile of some very important research that's going to happen out of this. And we are in the process of getting this published. We're working with some doctors to try to get this published, but I will just tell you what we found. In the 11 children ages 13 to 18 with this calorie load, they lost about 10 to 36 pounds in a year. And certainly there was exercise in there, and these kids were not running around obese beyond belief anyways. They were doing a good job, but this fine-tuned some things in a very important way. The adults too. And the weight loss 10 to 36 pounds, that's probably not a great representation, but it's kind of in that range of where people lost weight. And then the adults also, you can see, was a 5 to 21 pound loss in a year. Changes, some of them were diabetic, their hemoglobin A1Cs went down. I mean, really significant, exciting changes that we saw. And let me tell you something very interesting that's happened. And I've heard this from also other people that have started to follow this Mediterranean diet. These kids, some of them and adults, needed more calories. They actually needed more calories than they were assigned because they were losing too much. What is going on, everybody? I mean, that was exciting when I got that call. We were kind of mesmerized. Oh my God, this kid was on 1,200 calories and now we need to put him on 1,400? That's amazing. That is amazing. So again, I keep mentioning his name. He's just a really very motivated, caring person. Patrice Carroll, who's actually here too, they came up with a brilliant idea to do a cookbook from Latham that is actually available, and Patrice may have some here if you're interested, but it is absolutely gorgeous with a lot of the work that they did. I don't take credit. It's very nice they put my name on it, but really it's Paul and Patrice that have spearheaded this thing and have really made this thing go, and I was very honored to be part of it. I want to do this. I want to just dive deep now what I mean by nutrient dense and what those menus look like. The pictures that I'm going to show you are not what they're making at Latham, but they're ideas for you for home, okay? The first thing I want to say is, and this, again, like I said this at Latham, is that this has to be calorie controlled. Now, there are some families that have come to me and said, Melanie, like, I don't need to count calories as closely. And I do want to say this. When you get a diagnosis of PWS, depending on where you land and who gives you the diagnosis and where you land with a dietitian, they may be very, very focused on calories initially. I don't do that. What I try to do is look at what the diet looks like presently with a 7-day food record and adjust from there, either up because the child needs to gain weight, or if they're a little bit older and their weight starts inching up, or a little bit down. I don't like to have people typing in their calorie control, I have 1,200 calories a day, oh my God, he had 1,210, oh my God. That's not the way I operate, because who operates like that? That's like an eating disorder operation. I don't want to operate like that for you. So what we try to do is make some very, very small changes when we're calorie controlling, okay? So that's what I would do. If you're seeing your child inching up or inching down, keep a food record for 3 days and take a look and say, maybe we could do more of this, or maybe we could do less of that. And you could ask a dietitian for help with this, for sure. It's preferable that you do, but some of them may not all know about PWS, as I'm sure some of you have experienced. This is an example of a very nutrient-dense, delicious type of food, very veggie-heavy, rice, lots of different types of texture experiences, and this is really, really important with PWS, because I think there's something about a low-fat diet. It's just not very pleasurable for the vast majority of people. Again, some people swear by it, but I have found the vast majority do very well with different textures and shapes and colors of food. This is all part of what we recommend. Look at that salmon and broccoli. I mean, very healthy. The soy sauce on there with the green onions is going to make you hungry before lunch. This is a really great meal for somebody with maybe a little side of fruit. This is what I talk about. Sometimes I do a little oatmeal bar with families, and so the child will get, when they're a little bit older, they'll get a little cup of oatmeal that's maybe made with almond milk, and then they'll be able to create their oatmeal, right? I call it an oatmeal bar. So you'll put like some cinnamon and some nutmeg and some pecans and just like a little teaspoon of honey or something, agave, whatever you want. And then the child creates their own oatmeal. It's a little buffet, but it's controlled. And so these kinds of things you can do, and it gives them feelings. First of all, nutritionally gives them the satisfaction that they need, right? Because it's nutrient dense, and also they have control. So much of this is lack of control for any kid, diagnosed with PWS or not. You can do this, but this is what I often recommend with this, and this is a really good breakfast for some families. Again, eggs, vegetables, a little whole grain toast there is going to be okay, and some cantaloupe. Again, a very grainy salad with mushrooms. I don't know if that's barley or lentils, and some tomatoes and some greens in there. Looks like they're putting some nuts on there. And then examples, if you have, I always get worried that there's going to be somebody that works in the food industry in these meetings, and so if I said Frosted Flakes, they'd say, don't you? I work for the Frosted Flake Company. So I call them flaky cereal, any flaky cereal with milk and grapes. Let's change that to oatmeal, pecans, and raisins, like I talked about. If you have a tuna sandwich with bread and pretzels and an apple, I mean, very common lunch that we get, in the United States. Tuna salad on cucumbers. Cucumbers can do so many things these days. And an apple just kind of cuts the carbs. You still have the carbs in there from the apple and the cucumbers. Spaghetti, salad, and garlic bread, people do that all the time. But an eggplant lasagna is so good. How many of you have tried it? It's so good. You take the eggplant, you slice it, you roast it, and you use the eggplant as your noodles. It's a game changer. Chicken noodle soup with breadsticks and salad. Fish, asparagus, and salad is a good option. Tacos with hard shells. You could do a taco turkey salad. Pasta and cream sauce. You can try spaghetti squash and tomato sauce with some Parmesan cheese on top would be really nice. A half a bagel with cream cheese. Trying 1 slice of wheat sprouted toast with peanut butter or almond butter or cashew butter can work. Buttermilk pancakes, eggs, and bacon, which sounds delicious, but there's other ways to do it. A whole wheat waffle, eggs, and bacon, you can still get that breakfasty, American breakfasty feeling by just taking out a little bit of the carbs and adding some nutrient-dense grain. This is a good picture to take. This is about a 1,000-calorie diet. Kind of what Dr. Miller's study showed, 40 to 45% carbohydrate. But again, 1,000 calories, like, yeah, there's definitely kids that eat that and some adults that are probably not too far from that, right? But you'd be surprised when you really start moving towards Mediterranean, you may notice that you can give your child a little bit more. Okay. So I'm going to kind of hit you with some questions that you may have so that we can save time for even more questions. People ask me about artificial sweeteners all the time. And I know from personal experience and also just from what I've heard over the years that some people have a difficult time digesting these and tolerating them. I've seen people with headaches, diarrhea, especially from the sugar alcohols. They actually feel that they crave sugar more when they're using artificial sweetener, and they would be better off just saying, hey, I'm going to just drink a half a Coke. Now, I'm not saying that's what I'm recommending, but I'm just saying people, when they're really in tune with what's going on, they just feel like, or have that dessert or something, the Diet Coke's not working for them. It's hard because we need our kids to drink water, right? And so you try to find, there's like these amazing flavorings around that have these artificial sweeteners. So if you are using them, I encourage you to try to decrease it just a bit and maybe try to use some other things that I'll recommend under the hydration. And if you're not using them at all, I'd like you not to start if possible. But this is in everything. This is in gum. This is in, I've seen some of these in cereals, like things that you would think are pretty healthy. They show up in certain cereals. Yes, vitamins. And so you have to be really, really careful. So for hydration, I heard a really, really wonderful idea. If you are having problems getting your child or adult child to drink, these are lots of different ideas that you can have. You can really steep water for a long time. So you could slice apples and put cinnamon sticks in it and stick it in the refrigerator, and it just steeps over time. And it's really nice and flavorful and much less boring than plain water. It's spa water. You kind of see it a lot nowadays. People are putting watermelons and limes when you go to different parties. It's really nice. Basil, these kinds of things. Take advantage of these. And there's probably some nutrition in that water, with it soaking in those fresh fruits and vegetables and herbs. But the negotiate your water terms is something that I've loved from the beginning. And this was a family that told me about this who lives in Canada. They said that with their son, what they did is they would say, you can have your meal when you drink a glass of water. And he drank his water, okay? You got to get a little creative. Now, you don't need to be, if it doesn't work for your kid and it's causing more problems than not, I want to tell you that it may be something that could help in the future, that you could say, okay, well, we're all just going to drink our water, not just single that child out, but all of us are going to drink a glass of water before we get our salmon and broccoli and cantaloupe, okay? Exercise. So I need to just stand here with the exercise thing for a second, because a lot of people will come to set up a private consultation with me and they'll say, my 5 or 6 or 7-year-old, the weight is kind of creeping up, or 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, the weight's creeping up, I'm getting nervous, we're kind of hitting that point, what do we do? I always ask for a 7-day food record of everything the child eats, a list of all the parents' questions and concerns, and the growth charts from the pediatrician. Those are the 3 things that I need to have. Once I look at the food record, I think, what's going on with this kid with activity? Even before I don't even think about the food. And a lot of times the kid is not that active. Now, I know that there's some physical constraints that you can't, like the kid cannot sit there and do aerobics for an hour and a half at 4, okay? But there are little things you can do and little things I've seen over the years that are amazing. I've had parents where I've said, I really don't want to change anything. Can you just increase activity 10 minutes a day? Can you walk around the block? Can you have a dance party 10 minutes a day? Can you jump on a trampoline with the child? Can you throw them in the air for 10 minutes a day? These kinds of things actually help them. It's not I don't want people to think that if your child starts to gain weight or your adult child starts to gain weight, that you have to slash thousands of calories. You're not dealing with that many to begin with. Concentrate on the exercise. I don't want to take food away from these kids. So concentrate on the exercise and see if you can burn off some calories that way. That's the first thing I do when I see a private client. The second thing I do is make very small changes. So let's say somebody says, well, Melanie, I'm giving my kid 24 ounces of almond milk, and they're 5. Okay, that's enough. You don't need that much, okay? Let's pull back a little bit. You're treating the child like they're infants. Let's pull back a little bit. Maybe give, 20 ounces a day or 18 ounces a day, and I'll look at the calcium and make sure the calcium and the vitamin D are there. And if it's not, if we have to pull back even more, then we'll give it a supplement, okay? So it's very little things. I usually always try to cut the drink first, because drinks, there's some research in like intuitive eating studies that show that when you drink your food, it actually doesn't fill you up, maybe initially it will, as much as when you actually chew, start the salivary amylase in your mouth, swallow it, and go to your stomach. There's a process of digestion, a slow kind of hormonal cascade of your body saying, oh, there's food there. So what I do with my families is I say, let's look at what you're drinking first. So first I look at exercise, then I look, what are they drinking? And try to adjust there if I need to. Okay, if we're adjusting up, let's say your child's not gaining good weight, what I usually do is use oils, minimally 1 teaspoon of oil, especially if they're very, very young and they're starting solids. But then, we look at other ways that we can increase nutrition there. But I just want you to take a beat and really understand that exercise is crucial. Okay, so I want to switch. I love talking about nutrition. But what I love more than anything is behavior around food. That is I find it fascinating the way we all behave around food. Do you eat standing in front of the sink, over the sink ever? Do you eat in your car? Do you eat, lots of people have different kind of eating styles. When you have a child with PWS, you have to take a hard look at how you eat and what's going on in your family. And so what I say to people is you want to eat together as much as possible. You sitting there preparing dinner and the child sitting at a little kiddie table watching TV is not ideal. They need to learn how to use a fork. They need to learn how to drink from an open cup. They need to see you chew and swallow and talk. We're trying to raise human beings. When they grow up, they need to have some kind of a semblance of manners. And so I take this very seriously. And so should you, and really so should everybody. Set limits and structure and follow through. So if food is being thrown or tantrums are happening, they need to be dealt with. No negotiations. Some of the things I sometimes do is I have people post their menus for the week. It's up to you. It may not work for your family. And post the rules. And the rules will be stuff like, we sit down at the table for meals. We don't use technology. If you have something nice to say about the food, please do. If you don't, stay quiet. These kinds of things are raising human beings. Forget the PWS, just raising human beings. And so it's very important. They're doing this 3 times to 6 times a day. They're sitting at a meal, chewing and swallowing food. And so the behavior is very important. Eating a similar diet too. I know some people have dietary needs, different things that they need to eat, but trying as hard as possible to eat whatever your child is eating so they want to be like you. They look up to you and they love you. And so what you're eating sends a signal to them. No technology while eating. I was in a restaurant the other day and I saw a mom and it must have been the mom's mother, so the grandma, and a little 3-year-old who had an iPad on with a huge Beat headphones, the ones that like rappers, whoever, I don't know, the teenagers use with the 3-year-old. And the mom was shoveling food into the child while she watched, I don't know, some kind of a program. And I thought I wanted to hand her my card, but I did not. But I just want to illustrate this. There's so much wrong with that picture, with all due respect if you're doing this now. This child needs to learn how to eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full. Even diagnosed with PWS, I give this talk to all parents that come see me. Set up the environment to help them do that as much as they can, right? As much as they can. So this child should not be being spoon-fed at 3 years old, okay? They can make a mess. That's okay. It's developmental. but they shouldn't have the headphones on, the technology on. She's not going to understand her hunger and satiety measures. So she's either going to end up with maybe an eating disorder or maybe be obese later on in life. Locking cabinets and refrigerators to prevent access. This is a very, very personal thing for every family. Some families do it and love it. They just feel secure. They just feel better about it, and that's great. Some families, they say, we're just taking it day by day, Melanie. We may do it, we may not, but we're going to take it day by day, and that's respectable too. I don't think it's fair to, say everybody's got to do this, because times are changing, things are changing, and this is a spectrum of different things that can happen. But again, if you're worried about the locking of the refrigerators and cabinets, it's more scary than doing it. Like, it's more scary thinking about it than doing it. It's actually a safety measure for some families. So I wanted to give you some websites on where you can go if you're looking for these nutrient-dense foods. Sometimes you're going to make some of these, like you may leave out of here and say, oh, this is so great. I got all this great recommendations from her. This is fantastic. And then you go and you make the recipe and say, this is disgusting. Like, this is not working for me. So I don't work for any of these people, okay? I just know I've cooked out of these before for sure. And some of them are hits, some of them aren't. The Smitten Kitchen, does anybody know what Smitten Kitchen is? Oh my gosh, this woman. She is a force, okay? And I encourage you, if you like somebody very much, go look at their site and see, what could I do with this recipe to maybe change it or improve it or use as is, because it's pretty nutrient dense. I like her a lot. The New York Times too does a fabulous job of recipes there, and allrecipes.com, they have, thousands and thousands of recipes. If you have a child who's very young and you're going to start to introduce foods in the next couple months, there's wholesomebabyfood.com. I tell people to go to that a lot. And that's a great site. It's really pretty and lovely, and it just kind of gives you an indication of how you should introduce and what you do, and I just kind of like it. So this is kind of like the third section of this, and I just want to stop and say this, and I don't know, again, how people are out here. I think I'll get to know you more when you ask your questions and answers, but a lot of people that come to me are scared and their children are really young, like, maybe they do okay with formula or breastfeeding until like 4 to 6 months, and then they call me at maybe 8 or 9 or 10 months and say, I'm in trouble here. And I just want to acknowledge and say that you did not sign up for this. Like, I signed up for this, right? I took the exam to be a dietitian, but you didn't sign up for this. And so it's very hard to get your head around the fact that you have to become a nutritionist, because you do. But I want to tell you something that I tell all my clients that come to me. Every single mother and father should be sitting in this talk right now learning about how to feed their child nutrient-dense foods. You're just being forced to sit here, right, because of the diagnosis. But everybody should hear this. Everybody should be feeding their children like this. And I may answer a couple questions for you, but guarantee you'll know more than me in like a couple years. You won't even remember who I am. You'll just move on. There's these parents that I saw years and years ago that are just, they got it. They don't need a dietitian, they got it. They know better than doctors, they know better than nurses, they know better than all of us, because they understand. They know what their child needs, they know what their family needs, and they go on with it. But the truth is, every mom, every person that gets pregnant in this country with the spouse or the father, whatever, should sit in a nutrition class like this and learn about how to feed their kids. There's more with driver's ed than there is with nutrition, okay? So I just wanna say I understand if you feel overwhelmed, or you were a person that ate, whatever the heck you wanted, and you like, I was gonna say a brand and I stopped, certain frozen foods that you have loved and lived by for years and years and years, and I'm telling you to roast vegetables. But really, everybody should be doing that. One of the things that happens with parents, I've seen this cycle over the years, is that they put their kids in school. So they kind of get a hold of things, and they put their kids in school, and they are outraged by what they see. And so am I. So I wrote an article for the Huffington Post in 2014. I know it's kind of old, but I was really, really upset because people were coming to me who had Prader-Willi syndrome, families with Prader-Willi syndrome, and families who weren't, literally crying. Why are they having a birthday party every week with donuts and cupcakes with 36 kids in the classroom? Do they read the news? Do they see the statistic? What is going on? So I wrote a letter, an open letter to American principals, and I said, look, offer some non-caloric celebration for these kids. You want to increase your library? Have people bring in a book in honor of their child's, turning year. Have stacks of pencils and erasers. Do you know how much kids that age like a pencil and eraser that sharpens the old way? They dig it, and they're cool, okay? There's erasers all over the place that they can have. And so the other thing that I started noticing, and I'll just read the end of this, is that there were teachers that hand out gummy bears for right answers. They'll say, oh, that's right, 4 + 2 is 6. Good job, honey, here's a red gummy bear. And I wrote, you must ban food incentives for correct answers. Correct answers should add to the child's self-esteem, not their waistline. And teachers they have the hardest job. They should be paid triple what they're paid. But we also need to take into account that there's kids with food allergies who I am really, really supportive and sympathetic to families with food allergies. And there's kids that are battling certain things like Prader-Willi syndrome or obesity or whatever they are. And so the schools need to really think about that. So I encourage you, even though you may not want to be a nutritionist, poach this letter and send it to your school, and just, you're fighting for the good of the community by doing something like this. The other thing is soccer or baseball or whatever, tumbling. Parents, out of the kindness of their hearts, want to give these kids something great to eat. And I think that pumping our kids full of sugar after soccer is a physiologic mistake and sends the wrong message. If snacks are going to continue, they should set a fresh fruit policy. You've got to come up with something when you're writing to these people and talking to them. Give them an alternative. Show them how. You can't just say, stop bringing the donuts to soccer. You have to show them what to do. And then the question I asked at the end is, would you eat a cupcake after your 5-mile run? Just think about it. I don't know, maybe 5 hours after my 5-mile run, but not right away. And that's what we're doing with our kids. So again, I'm kind of asking you to be a nutritionist, even though I know some of you don't want to be, and to get out there and spread the word, not just for your kid, but we've been tasked with this. We've got to do it, I think. I sat here and told you that the Mediterranean diet was the way to go for now, I think, but I want you to know this word. How many of you heard of nutrigenomics? Anybody hear of it? So it's pretty exciting, and so what I think is going to happen is there's some people that do come and say, Melanie, we've been following the low-fat diet for years, and we are just fine, thank you. Thank you so much for the Mediterranean, but no, we're going to stick with low-fat. Okay, great. Whatever's working, I don't like to break anything that's, doesn't need fixing. But I believe in the next couple years that we are all going to have pre-assigned diets. So you may need to eat more vitamin K in your diet, spinach, kale. You may need to have more almonds. I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know if it's going to be a blood draw, urinalysis, hair exam. Who knows? It's going to be a bunch of stuff. Genetics. Well, certainly they're going to pull blood to find your genetic code to figure out what your diet's going to be. But this is on the horizon. This is absolutely happening. In the 1990s, there was a diet that came out called the blood type diet, and I thought, oh my God, this is crazy. Not so much anymore. There's something to it for sure, I think. The other thing I want you to think about before you leave today is your gut. There's something going on in our guts. A lot of things are going on. There's microorganisms that live in your digestive tract and the tract of your child. 300 to 500 different kinds of bacteria, viruses, and fungi. And it's also called lots of things. So if you start to read about it, they call it the gut flora, the gut microbiota, the gastrointestinal microbiota, microbiome. So just those kinds of words are usually referring to the gut. And what we're seeing is, and I think there's actually a study out of Canada maybe that they're doing with maybe stool samples of PWS children to see what's happening in the gut. The stool's a window into what's happening in your gut. And what they're finding with certain diseases is that there's a different microorganism profile in somebody that has type 2 diabetes or obesity. There's years and years people have been on diets and they cannot lose weight. Maybe it's because they're eating the wrong foods. Maybe they should be eating something completely different and they would lose the weight. Maybe it's not just simple diet and exercise. There's something going on with our genes, with our gut, so keep your eyes open. So there's some things we know about the gut, and you probably know this already, but everything I said today, pretty much, keeping your gut healthy, these things can help. And then the other question I get all the time, well, Melanie, can't I just take a probiotic? You could, but I'm not sure if that's the strain that you need. You may need something different. So you could rotate, I guess. You could say, I'm going to take the Culturelle this week, and then I'm going to do something else next week, and then I'm going to drink this kefir this week. I don't know. I really don't have a prescription for you. But just be in tune and get ready to learn and know and read about what's going on with the gut. So in summary, this is pretty small. I'm sorry about this. I just want to land here that a carbohydrate, protein, and fat diet that's nutrient dense and real is the best. Fresh foods, farmers markets, shopping the perimeter of the grocery store because that's where the freshest food is the best. Reading food labels closely, and if it has tons of ingredients, chuck it. Limiting sugar intake and artificial sweeteners. No juice, sports drinks. Structuring meals and snacks is very important. I don't like television or other devices while eating. Locking cabinets and refrigerators to keep children and adults safe if that is necessary for your home. Intensive, frequent physical activity should probably be first, but it's fifth. With pediatrics, follow growth charts and wait carefully. Please, please, if you have young children, see your pediatrician. This is what they get paid for. Call and make an appointment for a monthly weight check. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I used to go in, I just needed a once-over. I used to say about my kids. I'd say, Dr. Brown, I just need a once-over. Can you just lay your hands on the kid? Just make sure the kid's okay. I'm doing the best I can, but I don't know. That's what you should do too. You should go in and you should make sure. And if you don't like your pediatrician, you should fire them and find somebody else. Find people that will love you and care for you and care for your child, and don't be with any doctors that don't make you feel like you're in this together, or dietitians. Stay informed about nutrigenomics and gut health. Oh, thank you. That's it. That's all. Well, that was good. Okay, half an hour. Thank you. Huh?
So we have some time for questions. I don't have a microphone though.
Oh, I'll repeat the question when I hear. I think we'll be able to hear. Hi.
You mentioned probiotics. What are prebiotics?
Oh, that's a good question. So, and I don't know that much about those, but there's certain kinds of foods that qualify as them. They kind of set the gut up for kind of to function appropriately and well. And so there's probably some kind of a ratio that you need of prebiotics and probiotics to keep your gut healthy. But again, we don't really know what that is. We don't know what that is. So it's a form of it's certain kinds of foods or supplements that can help with digestion or with kind of the whole interplay of the microorganisms in the gut.
Yeah, I like to think that I'm a dietitian as well. I like to think of probiotics as food probiotics. Like, yeah. So, you can have a good quality going, but if you're not consuming it the right food. Yeah.
The problem is knowing your colony. Right? Yeah, we don't know the colony. So, but you can look up, there's absolutely, if you look up prebiotic, examples of prebiotics, you can find those very well, but it kind of primes the gut. Yes? Yes?
Well, do you have like a floor guidepost for what you kind of prefer based on age or height? Do you have something to measure?
Do I have a guidepost for young children on what they should fall on the growth chart? Oh, right. So here's the thing. Again, some people don't like my style. I'm going to be very honest with you. Some people prefer calorie. I'm not your dietitian, if that's it. I really want to see where you land with your food record. See what your growth charts show me, because those pieces of data tell me where to go. So, I've seen kids, 3 years old eating 900 calories or 1,500 calories or 800 calories or 1,200 calories when I used to analyze. I don't even analyze anymore. I really want to get away from that because there's so much anxiety that people were coming in with me. They're like, this is the last 2 years of keeping calories. So I don't have a caloric load of exactly what they should be eating because I really think it's individualized. I'm sorry, I can't be better at answering that. Yes.
So if you haven't been introducing this type of diet, your children's completely resistant to any vegetable, how do you just cold turkey, just say this is what's for your meal, take it or leave it, or do you gradually, how to introduce that?
That's a great question. There's a woman named Ellen Satter. Has anybody ever heard of her? Okay, good. Ellen Satter, it's ELLYNSATTER, institute.org. You should go there. She's all about behavior and picky eating, which this nice person is describing. When you're trying to transition your child, there's a couple things that I like to say. And it's a whole kind of program where you would post the menus, you post the rules. And when you post those menus, you want to make sure that you're not, there's some parents that come to me that say, I'm fed up. I don't care if this kid cries. I don't care if this kid starves for 3 days. We're going to have some broccoli. Like, that's what they'll say. But there's other parents that they're like, I got to ease into this. I can't do this. So they slowly start to integrate things. If your kid likes eggs, maybe you start to put a little spinach in there just to get them used to them. If they don't eat them, they don't eat them. You clear the plate. That's where Ellen Satter comes in, because she talks about the division of responsibility. Your job is to provide the food. You all you decide what you want to serve, you go to the store, you prep it, you set the table, you prep it, although I think your child should set the table very soon when they can. And then there's a line. Then there's that's the division of responsibility. Then you provide it to the child. They decide whether they eat it or not. And what we have to respect, everybody, is when a child decides not to eat, let them be. Don't force feed them. And over time, they will get used to this. But I think to slowly introduce them is to take a look at what you're currently eating and start to do something a little bit. They call it, it may not be exactly food chaining, but speech pathologists call it food chaining, where you kind of start to link. So if your child likes peanut butter, you should, mix it with a little almond butter and then go on to the almond butter. It's like weaning dog food, kind of, and you slowly wean them onto those type of thing. But Ellen Satter Institute is well worth the read. The entire site, it's not related to PWS, but it's related to behavior, and so much of what I do with families is that. Does that help you? Okay, good. Yes?
Could you talk a little bit about satiation in terms of like which diet you're using? So if for the rest of us who don't have PWS, if like a snack of almonds and string cheese is satiating, in addition to being nutritious for us, how does the satiation part work in PWS?
Well, that's the kind of, I guess if I had that answer, then we would have the hormonal cascade is off, right? Like they're not processing and feeling full like we are. So what we've seen at Latham, what I've seen in individual patients is that when we can't take it away, the hunger, but we can provide a diet that's more satisfying, and hopefully we'll take some of the hunger away while we wait for some kind of a drug to really kind of control things. So that's where we are. So, but for a kid with PWS, I think the, nuts, avocado, like some avocado and, cottage cheese is a much better choice than rice cakes, but also for everybody. I don't know.
So you were talking about kind of, encouraging schools to not do food, treats, and different things, and I totally agree with that. My daughter's 1, so I have total control over her food right now, which is wonderful, because I know that's not always the case. But how do we early on establish and lay groundwork for her to be able to move independently, that's our goal, move independently in a world full of food, right? I can't control every environment, so what are some suggestions for yourself?
That's a great question. That is a great post. I mean, are you part of any Facebook pages? Okay, great. So let me just say the Facebook thing, and then I'm going to say something about like movement. So the Facebook pages can either like make you joyful and happy, or they can make you cry. Okay, because sometimes you just think, oh my God, this is. So you use them sparingly. Use them when you feel you need that. But a question like that would be fabulous, because I think people have brilliant ideas of what they do. Some people, and again, I'm not endorsing anything, because I don't think it's fair for me to tell you what to do. You all have different families and personalities and where you come from. But some people kind of label it like a food allergy. So some people say, you know what, this is not a food that's good for our bodies, so we're going to stay away from this. Some people say, for special occasions we have that food, but other times we don't have that food, even though it's out. And so, you have to I would make sure that everybody's on the same page who's around the child. It's very important that, dad's not like, let's go have some ice cream, and then mom's like, no, we're gonna have fruit, whatever. You wanna make sure that everybody's on the same page and you agree on it, but starting to phrase it as it may not be so good for your body, that seems, I hear that probably the most. Some people get a little drastic, like you're going to throw up if you have that, which I'm not going to throw up. But I would be cautious with that, because if they do have that and they don't throw up, they're going to be like, yeah, I didn't throw up. So I'm going to have donuts when I can get them. So you can phrase it, it doesn't work very well with your body, it doesn't make you think as well or feel as well. And continue to say that, but not too much. You also don't want to inundate them with that.
Can I do a quick
Yeah.
question? So, in your experience, we're planning on doing like no sugar substitutes, and that's, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
babies, that's what we would do anyway. How feasible is that in the real world? In your experience?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I used to be so, I don't know, it's your journey, I guess what I want to say, and be respectful of, it's your journey. And you have to do what's right for you. But I'm going to tell you something. If that child has a cupcake, what I don't want to have happen is I don't want you to feel like a failure, or I don't want you to cry. I want you to understand that we're on this planet and there's cupcakes there, and they're tempting and they're good. And so it may happen, like where you are now, that's okay. And if you say, Melanie, no sugar, no, yeah, there are families that definitely stay away from sugar. But if he or she happens to get a hold of something, or he or she comes to you at 8 and says, in a very distinct, thoughtful, grown-up manner, I want a trick or treat, and I want 3 pieces of candy from that trick or treat candy, maybe you allow that. I have plenty of families that absolutely have Christmas, absolutely have Hanukkah, absolutely have Halloween, but they will manipulate it a little bit. Like they'll say, okay, we're going to go out, we're going to dress up, we're going to get candy, and then you get to pick 3 pieces, and then they say, give me all your candy, and you give them a toy. Those kinds of things, So just don't beat yourself up. Whatever you decide, I support you, but I don't want you to get sad if something happens down the road and your child ends up, eating something here or there. Yeah.
I was just going to tell her too, there's a book, probably a lot of people in here know, but I read it to my son, and I've actually taken it to his class and read it to the class. But it's called Gordy's Magic Diet. And it's like a cute little kid story about like how certain foods can like create this monster in your belly, and this monster doesn't make you feel very good, and it's not good for you. And that seems to help a little bit. But I don't know, as we've gotten older, I think my son is now 7, he just turned 7, and he eats in the cafeteria at school, and we're pretty much vegetarian. I mean, we do have, I guess we're like pescatarians. Occasionally we have some fish, like salmon or steelhead trout, usually. But for the most part, I think he has always been a very good eater. But now we're in school and he's eating in the cafeteria and he has support there. But he's coming home every day and like vegetables are still in his box. Like, oh, I'm not going to eat that. He's totally not eating that. And so we've had a lot of questions too about meat recently. And that's something that we have chosen to avoid because of fertility. We just don't think that having a bunch of like heavy steak and bacon and things that are slow for a normal person to digest is good for his gut. So we've kept him on a really, actually very high fiber diet, and he's doing great on that. But I guess, like, what is your suggestion once a child becomes pretty socially aware? Like, we try to have these conversations like, well, Helen can eat that because his body works differently, but your body, and it's becoming a hard concept for him.
Yeah, I mean, this is like your question is a parenting question for like all 4 million people that have babies a year. Like this is just not PWS. This is like we need to get a parenting expert up here because yeah, you can say that for anything. My kid, Gavin has Fortnite. Why can't I have Fortnite? In my house or whatever it may be. I think the way that some people have dealt with the diet thing. Now, how old is 7?
He just turned 7.
Okay. So some of the ways that people have dealt with the diet thing is that, in your home, you need to practice, when you're under my roof until you're 18, this is what we're doing, that kind of thing. And then when you're out, I mean, has he said, I want meat?
Well, it's more like questions like, we went out to dinner recently and someone had ordered steak. And it was a hibachi grill, but like we were very controlled. We actually talked the chef before we go, so he gets like a little bit of salmon and vegetables. It's great. He loves it because it's like tricks. Yeah, of course. But they pulled out a big hunk of steak, and he was like, "What is that?" And then we had a lot of questions about like, why don't I eat steak? And is a dead cow? Well, aren't cows for milk? I think he's just growing a real awareness about the world around him. And when peers coworkers at school are eating slices of pepperoni and he's not. Like, he's just starting to figure out, like, I eat kind of different, and why don't we eat that?
Right.
And so just, yeah.
I don't think we should dismiss this. I think we should stay with this for a minute because I think, you want to pay attention to his questions. Tell me his name. Jude. So you want to answer Jude's questions. You want to, why don't we eat meat? Well, that's such a good question. Thank you for asking that. Actually, we just know that, every family is built differently, and our family does really well eating this way. Oh, well, I want to eat that way someday or something. And you can say, well, that's really, you have to acknowledge feelings. I'm reading this book. It's very famous. It's been around forever. How to talk so your teens will listen, and how to listen so your teens will talk. And they used to have it for kids. And it talks a lot about, like, when your child comes to you, you need to acknowledge their feelings, even if it's crazy. Like my math teacher doesn't know anything. That's interesting. It sounds like you don't think your math teacher knows how to teach math. Tell me why. You would be surprised what they say. But you don't want to talk too much. So you don't want to sit there and go, listen, I went to this lecture and this woman, Melanie, told me this, and I have to eat salmon and this and lentils and this. They don't want to hear that. So I think acknowledging it and saying, hey, that's really interesting. This is meat. It does come from a cow. And maybe is it just because of slow motility that you want to follow this diet, or is it also because you don't want to eat meat because of the cruelty to
I just don't think, and I'm sorry, everyone in the room, but I just don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
I don't think that it's required for us to be.
That's fine.
I've grown my whole life that way.
Sure.
But I also do think, like, his dad eats that. He eats steak. He grew up differently than me. I'm totally fine with that. I'm not going to make him a burger, but if he's going to order it. But I don't want Jude having that because I know his motility is slow. And right now, this is a child who really doesn't get constant. I mean,
So I would just answer the questions. I would just be I would not show a lot of emotion. Because if you start freaking out and saying, it's bad for you, and all of us have done this. I have done this with my 11 and 12-year-old that I say, I'm not going to get crazy, and then I go crazy. But try not to go crazy, Just try to say, like, oh, this is interesting. These are good questions. Are you thinking about this? Like, what's going on? Okay, well, we eat vegetarian for now. And just leave it at that. Don't say, don't try to anticipate. And I would leave it at then. And then if he says, steak one day, say, well, maybe we'll think about it another time or something to put it off.
yeah. My last question, sorry everybody, I did actually have one. This wasn't really about me. It was more like awareness of what we're eating and the differences on our plates.
Sure.
Because our kids, I think for those that are cognitively aware, they see that. And so I'm just curious, like as they get older, it's easy for us to say, like, well, you have a turkey belly, you can eat that. But when everybody else around you is eating it, it's really, it's just hard.
It's very hard.
But my other question is about soy.
May I say something real quick?
Yeah.
You've been vegetarian and you made the whole switch to the family, even Kevin. And Clara now takes great pride in being vegetarian, not because of Prader-Willi, but she's sometimes too direct. She will point at other people's needs that we don't do that. And we're vegetarian. So she's kind of proud of it. I think Judy, loves to be like you and maybe his sisters. And that's a good way.
Well, he, like, the first time that ordered steak we do, and he was like, you eat dead cow? Yes. And then it was actually hilarious. I was like, that was a lot of judgment for a 7-year-old. I mean,
Well, Clara had asked questions, and she's a little bit. We love animals, and we have chicken on our own. And I said, before we switched, I was like, oh, tonight we have chicken. And she was like, you have chicken? And I was like, well, should maybe other people's chicken. And I had a conversation about why we made the choice.
yeah. I think he's getting it. I think he just wants to be with the crowd. So, you know what I mean? Like every child. Every child.
You're just trying. Well, tell me what your other question is.
So my other question is, and this is another way I feel very strongly about, and it's not all the time, but we occasionally will do edamame, we occasionally will make some stir-fried tofu, crispy tofu. I'm going to buy non-GMO, and I feel okay with that because we're not doing it every single meal. The amount of phytoestrogens in the soy is so low. I've done a ton of reading about it. But I do know our kids also have like some endocrine issues. And so I'm just curious, and this is probably something that's not cookie cutter. But I have fed, Judith's had some soy in his diet his whole life. And I have not felt strange about doing that.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
And I wanted to ask, the nutritionist no one up the room.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with what you're doing. What I have a problem with is when you take the soybean and then you make it into like a bar that's like soy protein isolate. Those kinds of things when you break the soy down, but I don't have a problem with that. I think it's just fine. Other questions? Yes?
Favorite fats and thoughts on MCT?
Favorite fats? I mean, a wide variety, right? All different kinds. Grapeseed oil, olive oil, avocados, different kinds of nuts, rotating brands, rotating. I don't recommend MCT oil. MCT oil from, I don't, it's often used in the ketogenic diet to push people into ketosis, right? I mean, I don't think I've ever had anybody that's not necessarily pushing towards ketosis that's giving MCT oil just for the heck of it. So I'm just not qualified to answer a question like that, I don't think. I think a ketogenic diet dietitian would be a great person to ask. Yes?
So when looking at fats in like the oils, let's say, how do you determine like this oil is a fatter source? I mean, like, you know, we do try to use like a variety of different oils, but it's one of those like I want to make sure like the ones that we're going to use are ones that are going to be overall beneficial, and you're not necessarily doing like the vegetable oil, canola oil. Yeah. So like how do you, when you're looking at oils, right, how do you go like, okay, yes, this is going to be a good one to use, and this one try to stay away?
Probably the monounsaturated oils that are heavy, like olive oil, would be good. There's also these amazing charts, and again, like I sound like just Google like saturated or like fat distribution in various oils, and there's amazing charts out there that show all the different kinds of oils and how much polyunsaturated fat and monounsaturated fat. But again, I'm telling you, like I am not as into the specifics anymore because I just think that we get caught up in that blueberry kale smoothie every morning, and it's a problem. So I rotate the oils. Now, some of the oils, like I won't use lard, I won't use I just don't use Crisco, but I will do like grapeseed, I will do any of like olive. I don't think I buy corn. I do buy canola. I know some people don't have a problem with that, but I make sure that I just rotate it. That's what I would do to stay healthy with the oils. Yes?
About severe food allergies. He's getting ready to be tested for DOE.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like severe.
I know, yeah.
So I guess mostly proteins. He has a hard time really just besides meat, like he can't have chicken or certain proteins at all. He's allergic to so many things.
Yes.
What are other alternatives in the protein families that would be good just to keep, you know,
So I actually probably encourage you to come talk to me later because I really need to understand more about like what exactly the allergies are, because I don't want to sit here and just say like you need to do this, and you're like EOE, EOE, EOE. So come talk to me later and then we'll go through and I'll give you some protein ideas. Yes?
what exactly is canola?
I don't know. Anybody know? Cheryl, do you know what canola is exactly? Rapeseed. Rapeseed. Yeah, it's rapeseed. It comes from rapeseed. Oh no. Yeah, so it comes from the rapeseed, I believe. Yes.
Can you just comment for the people and for those in the audience, if you're going to read what the differences are in alternative milks, and milks, like an alternative milk, the nutritional quality of that is not the same as cow's milk?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay. Wonderful question. Thank you. She wants to know, just come have a discussion about milks. Okay. So there's, again, like I just see a lot of different things. So some people come to me and say, you know what, I don't have a problem with cow dairy. I'm going to give my child some milk. Great. Okay, so then you want to give them fat whole milk up to the age of 2, okay? And then you can slowly move towards non-fat milk, because I really want to give kids more food, right, than liquid. I'm not that into liquid. I mean, they need to drink it for hydration, but I want to give them food. Some people opt for, there's a lot of almond milk usage, a lot. If you're going to use any of these alternative milks, the one thing I want to make sure that you look at is the vitamin D and the calcium in those milks. So please flip the labels over and look. So you can use almond. There's all these nut milks out now that people can use, and I encourage you to rotate your products. I don't see a lot of soy milk. You asked me about the soy. I don't see a lot of people using soy milk unless they may have allergies to nuts, but they can tolerate soy kind of thing. So it just kind of depends on that, but making sure that there's the calcium and vitamin D in the milks when you're choosing those. I don't know if that answers. Does that answer?
It was more also the amount of protein, because a lot of those milks are mainly like rice milk, is mainly all carbs.
Yeah.
So the same with the almond milk?
Yeah, they're very low in protein, but you can get your protein from other sources. So a lot of people are moving towards this higher protein diet, so it doesn't really quite matter so much. You just want to make sure you have adequate protein in the diet. It's not like that protein that's in the milk is something special and we have to get the source from there. No. calcium and vitamin D are pretty important, but we can get protein from other ways through the food. So if you're seeing almond milk, which is very low in protein, just make sure your child's getting enough protein in their food that they're eating, and their almond milk will be a source of calcium and vitamin D. And if they don't want to drink milk, I don't care. Just make sure there's calcium and vitamin D in their diet, have them drink water. I'm not married to the cow. Yes. Yes. Yes, you.
You said no, stay away from artificial sweeteners, but you also mentioned you passing like honey or agave or like maybe syrup.
Yeah.
Natural.
Yeah, those are not artificial. So those are actually natural. But yeah, like you don't have to. I'm not saying I don't work for agave or any honey, but I'm saying people do ask me, and that's why I bring up, can I just add a little touch to the oatmeal, Melanie? Can I add a little touch? Yes, you can if you want, but you don't have to. This family, maybe they don't want to do any sweeteners. Maybe you get some, you take frozen raspberries and mash them and use that as your sweetener, So absolutely, like that's just a touch. And it's also just to give the kid a little control, and you don't have to put it on there though. Absolutely not. Anybody else have any other questions? It's about 5 minutes till lunch, and then I think I'm hosting another little Q&A during lunch. Yes?
And so back to the milk. So when we found out, we just got our diagnosis a couple of months ago
Okay.
at our store.
Yes.
So when we found out, we switched to, she was drinking just regular 1% milk, so we switched to the Fairlife because
the high protein milk. I think you just have to see this. That's such a good question. That's a really good question because I think you have to just kind of watch what happens with the growth charts. Just watch what happens. And if you need to make adjustments, again, the first thing I do is exercise. Like, don't touch the diet. Don't even touch anything. The second thing I do is take a look at what they're drinking. And if it's too much, maybe cutting back, replacing with water. Then I look at the diet. That's the third thing because I don't want to take food away from anybody. I don't want to alter anything. Sometimes I'll just have a low-fat diet and I'll just add fat and the kid does better. Is the weight okay? No, okay. I know, sure, I understand. That happens. Good for you. So yeah, just monitor it, and then so this was really good for you to hear this. I mean, I'm not trying to, but I'm just saying, like, this was really, really good for you to hear. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, you feel good? All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you.